I think we can all agree that the Black Adam movie did not really change the balance of power in the DC universe. In fact, I'd say it changed nothing at all really. It was mostly pretty forgettable, but what was pretty great about it is the superheroes other than Black Adam. And for this list, I want to talk about the suit worn by Pierce Brosnan as Dr. Fate. Something about this is just all kinds of yes. Not only is it actually Dr. Fate in live action, which is amazing, but it just got the character's look so right. The helmet itself is so angular and imposing without losing the vibe of the comic book version. The actual suit itself looks super cool too, with the base layer having the kind of dark runic writing that you might miss at a quick glance. And then coupled with the gold features and the cape, it's beautiful, especially in the sequences where he shows off just what he can do. Aquaman doesn't usually catch a break. He is often looked down on and made fun of in the comic book landscape, and his suit doesn't really do much favors for him either. Now over time, Aquaman has had many different looks, going for beards and long hair and even having various different hands, but I think it's fair to say that as soon as Jason Momoa became Aquaman, something changed. He brought a level of cool and power to his portrayal as the guy who talks to fish that he was instantly a favorite. Now his more muted supersuit in Justice League was to be expected to try and coolify the classic look of Aquaman, but somehow, in 2018's Aquaman, when James Wan injected the franchise with a lot more fun and color, they gave Aquaman his most comic accurate orange and green suit, and it actually worked. This is easily the best Aquaman suit ever made in live action, not that there have been many. It's crazy to me how using the template of what many would consider the goofiest of superhero costumes turned into one of the live action best. While Netflix's Daredevil Season 2 had probably the best version of Daredevil's suit seen in live action, and She-Hulk had that classic yellow and red version of the suit, Daredevil Season 1 absolutely nailed Matt's first homemade suit. Charlie Cox absolutely delivers the best Matt Murdock we have seen, but what he wears for most of the first season and again in Daredevil Season 3 really gives you an idea of who this guy is. While the show's other flashier suits work in their own way, there's a visceral realism to Daredevil's simple black getup. The decision to add Muay Thai ropes around each fist as well is a small detail that kind of elevates the whole thing, providing some much needed visual contrast, but it also makes every single punch feel way more brutal. Yes, I do love the red suit that Matt wears as he gains more experience, but something about that first homemade suit just hits different. One of the things that kinda sucks about how the first run on the DCEU failed is how those incredibly awesome costumes are mostly gone for good now. Those suits didn't change much over the films that came out, but when Wonder Woman moved from Zack Snyder's movies to Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman in 2017, all they changed was the color palette, and yet it was all they needed to change to make it absolutely perfect. The simplistic combination of a red cuirass, blue skirt, golden boots, silver gauntlets, and the tiara of Themyscira just emulates Wonder Woman of the comics perfectly, while also basically proving Diana's physical durability due to the lack of protective armor. And just to top it off, when she wears that black furry coat over top of it, even cooler. I don't know how it's possible that when I was looking up supersuits that everyone loves, no one has said a word about the Moon Knight suit worn by Oscar Isaac. This suit was absolutely amazing. The bandage design making Moon Knight look a little bit like a mummy actually works really well. It's got some actual hieroglyphs on it too, which read, "Rise and live again as my fist of vengeance, my Moon Knight." That's so cool. I love it, but I think it's really when the Mr. Knight suit shows up that the whole thing just goes to another level. Mr. Knight in the comics is already an incredibly great looking costume, and that transfers easily over to the screen. Sure, it's basically just a white suit with a white mask, but when you take a closer look, the details on each garment just adds a whole lot more to the whole thing. For me, it was a perfect balance between taking the look of the comics and adapting it to the screen with just enough detail to set it apart. Now, coming into the next point, you had to know that a Batman suit would make it onto this list somewhere. There have been 10 different actors who have played the Dark Knight since 1943, from TV shows to trilogies and movie franchises. While the movies that displayed the older, grittier Batman played by Ben Affleck may not have been the greatest, that Batman suit, looking its best in Batman vs Superman, is arguably one of the most comic accurate bat suits ever. This suit took its inspiration from The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman is thick. Not only that, but he's classically unarmored, and there is a simplicity to the costume that makes it just stand out. When Ben put on that suit in BVS, he was certainly very thick, as was his Batman logo. He had the short, stubby ears, and the costume seemed to also lack any kind of padding, but I think the suit elevated its source material in its details. While The Dark Knight Returns looks like he was just wearing a gray bodysuit, whatever Batfleck is wearing is the coolest material I have ever seen in my entire life. So cool. Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man is an icon. The guy basically carried the start of the MCU. While he's had tons of revisions to his Iron Man armor, it may just be the character's Mark III armor from the first Iron Man movie that is his best. This is the final gold and red suit used by the end of 2008's Iron Man. Combining the design of the Iron Man Mark II armor with the Mark I's firepower and hitting it all with a lick of red and gold paint, the Mark III suit was a true powerhouse that did it all with absolute style. But then we also have to take into account the practical build of the suit that was used a lot during the filming, which just brings it to life in a way that future CGI suits can't really match. For a lot of people, this suit, and maybe the Mark VII from Avengers, are the best of the Iron Man suits. This was before Tony began using the liquid metal suits, which, while cool and sleek, and obviously technologically advanced, had the downside of just being too impossibly comic booky. Now, if we are talking superhero costumes, actually, if we are talking superhero movies in general, then I think we need to recognize that Deadpool is actually one of the best. Ryan Reynolds is so perfect as Deadpool that when I'm reading the comics, his voice is the one I can hear in my mind now. But it's not only his voice and personality that makes the Deadpool movies so good, nor is it only the comedy, the characters that show up, the real world feel, or the grittiness of the whole thing. What elevates it all is that Deadpool's costume is basically real. A lot of superhero costumes in film rely on CGI. What makes Reynolds' Deadpool suit so fantastic then is that it is entirely practical while still maintaining one of the coolest looks to the comics of any supersuit in history. This combination of practicality and comic accuracy alone is enough to have the Deadpool suit on this list, but then we gotta recognize that the suit has influenced other suits. The moving mouth as Wade talks and the expressive white eyes have been applied to characters like Spider-Man since the movies come out. Now look, it was really hard to not talk about Henry Cavill's Superman suit, which was supposed to evoke a kind of Kryptonian armor base layer, and it looked really incredibly cool. Of all the Superman costumes though, it just may be the simple suit worn by Christopher Reeve that would be described as perfect. While other suits may win out in modern design, none have ever come close to emulating Superman's true character like this suit. The Superman suit from 1978's Superman makes this list because of how well it fits the heroic, positive, purely good-hearted superhero Christopher Reeve portrayed. On top of that, the actual comic accuracy of the suit means that, despite the fact that there have been multiple Supermen since the film came out, with different takes, the majority of audiences still think of the bright blues, yellows, and reds of the 1978 film when you say the name Superman. And lastly today, while there have been many Supermans and Batmans, there have only been 3 big screen Spider-Men. And picking a suit to call the best one is seemingly an impossible task, but I'm gonna do it. Tom Holland's many suits from the MCU are really cool, and I'm especially excited to see the suit from the end of No Way Home, which looked to be the most classic suit of the bunch. Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man suit was unique and very sleek, while his suit in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the absolute best Spider-Man suit, no contest, to a lot of people, thanks to its bright colors, big white eyes, and the fact that Andrew is basically built perfectly to play the hero. But in my opinion, the original red and blue Tobey Maguire Spider-Man suit is bluntly one of the best in history. Raimi's twist on the classic costume was perfect. The aspect of Maguire's original suit that really helped it stand above the crowd is the silver webbing texture that's woven throughout the suit, which was then taken by the Amazing Spider-Man 2 suit later. The webbing added this kind of tactile kind of realism to the suit and offset perfectly against the deep red and dark blue of this Spider-Man's colors. Topped off by the frankly badass Spider-Man symbol on the front and back, and this suit, it's perfection. But that is my list. Let me know your thoughts down below. I will catch you all on the flippy flop, so please stay safe and peace out, nerds.